An invisible star, a red dwarf, hides 124 light-years away from us. And orbiting this faint celestial body is a planet that could fundamentally alter our understanding of life in the universe. Its name is K2-18b, and this is not its first time in the scientific spotlight. But now the reasons are far more compelling and perhaps historic. A team of astrophysicists from Cambridge, working with data from NASA's ultra-sensitive James Webb Space Telescope, has discovered chemical compounds in the planet's atmosphere that, on Earth, are produced exclusively by living organisms. The substances in question are dimethyl sulfide, DMS, and dimethyl disulfide, DMDS. On our planet, these gases are typically associated with marine plankton and certain bacteria. What they are doing in the skies of a distant exoplanet is still a mystery, but a mystery that might point toward extraterrestrial life. Professor Niku Madhusudan, the lead researcher on the project, calls this the most convincing evidence to date of potential life beyond Earth. If our interpretation is correct, he says, we could confirm it within a year or two. Perhaps the most astonishing part of the discovery is the quantity. The concentration of DMS found in the atmosphere of K2-18b appears to be thousands of times higher than equivalent levels on Earth. If this is not a mistake or observational artifact, we may be looking at an entire world teeming with life. But scientists, including Madhusudan's own team, urge caution. The current data, while impressive, still falls short of the rigorous standards required for a formal scientific discovery. To claim definitive proof, they need a statistical confidence level of 99.9999%, known as the 5 sigma threshold. At present, the result stands at 3 sigma, or 99.7%. A significant improvement from previous estimates of 68%, but still not enough. Other researchers and independent experts echo the cautious tone. Astronomer Catherine Hamans, for instance, emphasizes that even with reliable data, we cannot say with absolute certainty that DMS and DMDS originate from biological processes. The universe is vast and filled with exotic phenomena. We still don't fully understand what can happen inside such alien worlds. The intrigue surrounding K2-18b isn't based solely on its mysterious chemistry. The planet is roughly 2.6 times the size of Earth, and data suggests it has an atmosphere where ammonia is notably absent, a gas that should be present in a dry, oceanless world. This absence points to a compelling hypothesis: the presence of a vast subsurface ocean. And where there's water, the possibility of life follows. However, alternative scenarios remain. The ocean might consist not of water, but of magma, a revelation that would crush hopes for life. Adding complexity, the planet's very structure is under debate. Some models describe K2-18b as a mini-gas giant with no solid surface. That would render the world utterly inhospitable to life, at least any form of life we currently comprehend. Still, despite all the ifs and buts, the scientific community remains deeply intrigued. The Cambridge team is collaborating with other research institutions to investigate whether the detected molecules could be synthesized through non-biological means in laboratory settings. If such synthesis proves impossible, the case for a biological origin becomes far stronger. Professor Subir Sarkar, another member of the project, is careful with his conclusions, yet he acknowledges that the possible presence of an ocean makes K2-18b one of the most promising candidates in the quest for alien life. His message is simple and clear: watch this space. Cambridge astrophysicist Oliver Shortall, however, brings us back to reality. He reminds us that all of our knowledge about distant exoplanets is drawn from faint threads of light passing through their atmospheres. Interpreting those signals is like trying to read a smudged and half-burnt map, prone to error, to bias, to misinterpretation. Each promising signal could be either a whisper of life or a trick of the cosmic light. Yet the implications are impossible to ignore. Even the slightest probability of a biological origin for these gases elevates the conversation. This isn't just about chemistry, it's about existence. About the possibility that we may not be the only ones looking up into the void. Public curiosity has surged alongside scientific interest. News of K2-18b's chemical profile has lit up headlines, podcasts, classrooms, and conspiracy forums alike. Some hail it as our first real evidence of alien life. Others urge restraint, cautioning against the seduction of sensationalism. But in a world starved for wonder, K2-18b delivers, even if only as a promise. Further missions are already being drafted. Telescopes in space and observatories on Earth are preparing to lock their gaze on this distant enigma. New instruments, refined spectrographs, and smarter algorithms will seek to strip away more layers of the mystery. Every spectrographic fingerprint, every spectral dip in starlight brings us a little closer to confirmation, or recalibration. Science moves not with leaps of faith, but with patient, deliberate steps. And yet, some steps feel bigger than others. When we look at K2-18b, we don't just see another planet. We see a question written across the stars: are we alone? As Madhusudan puts it, decades from now, we may look back at this moment and realize it was the beginning, the dawn of a new cosmic chapter. The moment humanity first saw the glimmer of a living universe beyond the solar system. The discovery hasn't been made yet, but the journey has begun, and that alone is already extraordinary.
Across millennia, scattered among clay tablets, sacred scrolls, and whispered myths, humanity has preserved haunting tales of a celestial anomaly, a rogue planet, a cosmic saboteur whose rare appearance heralds disaster and upheaval. The Sumerians called it Nibiru, the planet of crossing. Egyptians feared it as the destroyer. Biblical texts knew it as the wormwood star. Are these merely the colorful myths of ancient peoples, or are they fragmented memories of an all-too-real cosmic threat? Modern science, once quick to dismiss such legends, is now forced to reconsider. In 2016, astronomers Konstantin Batygin and Mike Brown from Caltech presented mathematical evidence suggesting the existence of a massive planet at the far edge of our solar system, Planet 9. Their calculations describe a world 5 to 10 times the mass of Earth, on a highly elongated orbit that takes between 10,000 and 20,000 years to complete a single revolution around the Sun. Here's where ancient myth and modern astrophysics begin to blur. Sumerian cuneiform tablets, dating as far back as the 4th millennium BCE, contain astonishingly accurate astronomical data. They describe a solar system of 12 celestial bodies, including a mysterious 12th planet, Nibiru. How did ancient people know about Neptune, discovered only in 1846, or Pluto in 1930? Were they simply guessing, or did they remember something we've forgotten? One of the most controversial voices in this debate is researcher Zecharia Sitchin. He spent decades interpreting ancient Mesopotamian texts and proposed a radical theory: that Nibiru is a habitable world with a sweeping elliptical orbit, home to an advanced race known as the Anunnaki, beings who once visited Earth. Mainstream academia has rejected Sitchin's translations, but the uncanny parallels between his claims and recent astronomical findings are hard to ignore. Let's focus on what the data tells us. Something is warping the orbits of distant objects in the Kuiper Belt, a vast icy region beyond Neptune. These objects behave as if being shepherded by a massive, unseen force. The dwarf planet Sedna, for example, follows a wildly unusual orbit that can't be explained by known gravitational influences. And then there's the Kuiper Cliff, an abrupt drop-off in the number of objects beyond 50 astronomical units. What's causing it? Something or someone. These anomalies have left astronomers scratching their heads and have fueled growing speculation that a massive, unseen planet is hiding in the dark outskirts of our solar system. Ancient texts from multiple civilizations describe apocalyptic upheavals linked to a celestial intruder. The Egyptian Ipuwer papyrus eerily recounts plagues and chaos. The river is blood, the earth turned upside down. Days are shrouded in darkness. The Babylonian Epic of Era speaks of a time when the stars left their appointed paths. These aren't just poetic metaphors. They're historical shockwaves echoing from a forgotten trauma. So what happens if Nibiru, or Planet 9, makes its next approach? Even without a direct collision, the consequences could be catastrophic. Its gravity might tilt Earth's axis, triggering sudden climate shifts. It could awaken tectonic fault lines and stir dormant volcanoes. Disturbed asteroid belts might send deadly space rocks hurtling toward us. It could disrupt our magnetosphere, disabling electronics and satellites. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of this theory is the cycle. Sumerian texts suggest that Nibiru returns roughly every 3,600 years. If this is true, its last passage might have occurred around 1600 BCE, a time curiously aligned with the collapse of Bronze Age civilizations, a period marked by mass migrations, natural disasters, and inexplicable cultural decline. Was this coincidence or consequence? The clock might be ticking again. Today, the hunt for Planet 9 continues, using the world's most powerful telescopes and cutting-edge simulations. We stand on the edge of either confirming the greatest myth ever told, or revealing that ancient peoples tried, in the only language they had, to warn us. It may not bear the name Nibiru. It may not carry golden tablets or alien emissaries. But if it exists, its return will reshape everything we think we know about history, science, and our place in the cosmos. One thing is certain, our solar system is far from tamed. It harbors secrets in its coldest, darkest corners, riddles older than civilization itself. And perhaps, just perhaps, the old stories were never stories at all. Maybe they were prophecies. Maybe they were the echo of survivors. Maybe the star of change is already on its way.
At the edge of our solar system, there's a cold and mysterious region known as the Oort cloud. It's a hypothetical vast area of icy space objects surrounding the Sun. It's believed to lie far, far away from our star, from 2,000 to 5,000 astronomical units. For comparison, Pluto's orbit carries the planet between 30 and 50 astronomical units from the Sun. And there, in this freezing emptiness, a rogue planet may be hiding right at the moment. At least, that's what new research has recently suggested. Rogue planets are called this way because they don't orbit around any star. They wander the galaxy alone, totally untethered. Without stars, they don't have days or nights, only eternal darkness. Rogue planets are usually kicked out of their planetary systems, doomed to a solitary existence of circling the center of the galaxy on their own. Of the thousands of planets scientists have detected outside of our solar system, only a dozen or so are starless and cruising on their own. At the same time, there might be billions or even trillions of rogue planets wandering around our galaxy. If these estimations are true, it might mean that the Milky Way contains more free-floating planets than stars. Anyway, in 1907, one astronomer started a search for Planet X. It's a hypothetical giant planet moving around the Sun beyond the orbit of Neptune. The scientist was convinced that this planet existed because he had observed some irregularities in the orbits of Uranus and Neptune. His idea led to the discovery of Pluto in 1930. But the dwarf planet was too small to have any serious gravitational impact on the orbit of Neptune, let alone Uranus. These days, the Planet X theory is largely considered to be discredited, but it hasn't stopped astronomers from searching for planets in the far reaches of our solar system. And shockingly, a new study claims there might be one or even more out there, but much, much further away than predicted. An international team of scientists has recently simulated the unstable celestial mechanisms of the early solar system. They've discovered that there's a possibility that a few planet-sized bodies might have come to rest in the Oort cloud. You see, about 4.5 billion years ago, when the solar system was just forming, it was a hectic and unsettled place. Gravity sent debris from the cooling protoplanetary dust cloud hurtling around like cosmic tennis balls. From time to time, large chunks of this debris, even planet-sized ones, were sent flying far enough to escape the sun's gravity altogether. Such pieces of debris turned into rogue planets. Researchers have seen such space wanderers in distant exoplanetary systems, but according to them, there's a 0.5% chance that one or more of those wayward planets formed in the solar system and ended up in the Oort cloud after drifting away from the sun. At the same time, it's slightly more likely that a rogue, Neptune-like planet was snagged by the sun's gravity from another planetary system, and then this planet came to rest somewhere in the Oort cloud. The chances that this scenario is true reach 7%. If this turns out to be the case, then a space body similar to Planet X might indeed be hiding out there, on the outskirts of our solar system. The only problem is that it would still be too far away to have any impact on Neptune's orbit. In any case, most researchers are convinced that the Oort cloud is made up of a collection of way smaller icy objects. But given the distance to the Oort cloud and its enormous size, we may never really figure out what is lurking out there.
Have you heard about Planet 9? No, not Pluto. We're talking about something lurking on the outskirts of the solar system. A mysterious planet that exists in our solar system that we haven't yet discovered. We've been looking for it for years, but finally, it seems like scientists found a key to solve this mystery. Planet 9 is a hypothetical planet. Astronomers have been on the hunt for it for quite some time now. But it's so elusive that they've only been able to piece together a few details about its potential characteristics. One thing we do know is that Planet 9 has to be a massive world, possibly up to 10 times the mass of Earth. That's one big planet. It's also thought to be a distant wanderer, hanging out somewhere between Neptune and Pluto. Some scientists think that Planet 9 might actually be a mini Neptune, with a thick, gaseous atmosphere and a rocky core. Others speculate that it could be an icy world with a solid, frozen surface and a thick layer of hydrogen and helium gas. Of course, since we haven't actually found Planet 9 yet, we can't say for sure what it's like. We're not even sure that it even exists. Some say it's just a myth, like the Tooth Fairy or the Easter Bunny, but others are convinced that it's out there somewhere. And at the end of the day, we're not entirely sure if Planet 9 is even a planet. It might be a special kind of black hole or made entirely of dark matter. The search for Planet 9 began in the early 21st century when a group of astronomers realized that something wasn't quite right with the outer reaches of our solar system. They noticed that some distant objects, known as trans-Neptunian objects, were behaving in unexpected ways. Trans-Neptunian objects, or TNOs, are like the cosmic version of those items in the back of your fridge that you forgot about for years. They're small, icy bodies that hang out in the Kuiper Belt, beyond Neptune. So, scientists noticed that these guys started behaving weirdly. At first, they thought it might be a fluke. But as they dug deeper, they began to suspect that there was a ninth planet lurking out there. Why haven't we discovered it yet, you ask? Well, it may be because of Planet 9's weird orbit. All the other 8 planets orbit the Sun in roughly the same plane, which is like a flat disk. However, our hypothetical friend's orbit is different. It might be tilted and move in a different direction compared to the other planets. Its orbit might also be stretched out like an oval, rather than being nearly circular like usual. Because of this, Planet 9 might spend most of its time far from the Sun, like a true introvert. It only comes relatively close to the inner solar system every few thousand years. This would make it super faint and hard to spot, so the only way we may discover it is by studying the gravitational effects it has on our solar system. And this isn't the first time astronomers have gone looking for a new planet. Back in the 19th century, there was a similar hunt for a hypothetical Planet X. But this time, they were armed with much better technology and a much better sense of humor. They began calling their elusive quarry Planet 9, which was much catchier than Planet X. They even came up with a hashtag for the search, Pluto Lives. It was a reference to the fact that Pluto had been kicked from the planet gang, and some astronomers were eager to find a new planet to take its place. But the search for Planet 9 has been no easy task. It's like trying to find a lost sock in the laundry basket the size of a football stadium. It's so far away and so faint that even the most powerful telescopes can't see it. Instead, astronomers have had to rely on indirect evidence, like the strange orbits of TNOs, to try to figure out where it might be. Some scientists have even supposed that it might be a wandering rogue planet, which would explain why it's so hard to find. But they haven't given up hope. Till this day, they're scouring the skies using all sorts of high-tech telescopes and fancy algorithms to try and spot this elusive planet. And fear not, dear curious human, because it looks like after so many years of research, we may have finally found the key to solve this mystery. Astronomer Man Ho Chan from Hong Kong has a theory. He believes that Planet 9 could have a bevy of moons. That's right, not only is it a giant planet hiding out in the depths of space, but it's also a bit of a hoarder. Moons are all the rage in the outer solar system. In fact, almost every planet here has at least one moon, except for Mercury and Venus. Earth has just one, which is kind of sad if you think about it. Even non-planetary bodies like Pluto have at least a couple of moons. A bit unfair, isn't it? Anyway, taking this into account, let's go moon picking with Planet 9. The region between the rock-filled Kuiper Belt and the rock-filled Oort cloud, where this planet is predicted to be, should be ripe for the picking. Chan made some calculations and determined that it would be stranger if the elusive planet didn't have any satellites. According to his calculations, an object the mass of Planet 9 should capture at least 20 TNOs as large as almost 90 miles across. It's like our mysterious planet is playing cosmic Pokemon with these guys. So, what if Planet 9 has moons? Would that make any difference? Kinda, yes. They could give us some indirect clues to finally locate this mysterious planet. Now, you might be thinking, how in the cosmos can we possibly spot these teeny tiny moons? It's not like they're going to wave a giant flag or blast some Beyoncé tunes to get our attention. Well, apparently the key lies in something called tidal heating. Tidal heating might sound like a new workout trend, but it's a real scientific phenomenon. It happens when two celestial bodies are close together. You see, tides aren't just about the rise and fall of the ocean, they're also the result of gravity pulling unevenly on a planet or moon. When a planet and a moon are close enough to each other, their gravity pulls on each other, creating a bit of a football shape. And as these celestial bodies move around each other, they shift shape and generate friction inside, which produces heat. Wow, who knew that Planet 9 could have a workout routine? Perhaps we should start calling it Gym Planet instead. Anyway, if Planet 9 has any moons, the gravitational pull from these moons would cause it to change shape constantly, generating heat in the process. And we might be able to detect this mysterious planet through the heat produced by those moons, even though it gives off no other signals. Now, before you get too excited, finding them won't be a walk in the park. They're incredibly small and would be very far away from us. But hey, nothing worth discovering ever came easy, right? Scientists are optimistic that with the right technology, they can spot this telltale sign. It will be easier for us to spot them with fancy instruments like modern telescopes. Talk about cool friends to have, right? Sure, the process of finding it may be difficult and time-consuming, but the potential payoff is huge. Finding this planet could explain a lot of the strange behavior observed in TNOs, the Kuiper Belt, and beyond. As we've already mentioned, they've been acting super weird lately, tilting and aligning in suspicious ways. If this planet doesn't actually exist, we have yet to explain what is the reason for this strange behavior. In any case, the search for Planet 9 is one of the most exciting and intriguing quests in modern astronomy. It's like a cosmic scavenger hunt, and everyone's invited to join in on the fun. So, grab your telescopes and let's go planet hunting. Who knows, maybe we'll find it sooner than we think. So the idea of panspermia is that life can travel through space naturally, like seeds being spread around the universe. It's been debated for ages, but we didn't have any proof until recently. Now, with new discoveries and research, we're taking it seriously. People used to think it was impossible for living things to survive being launched off one planet, traveling through space, and land on another planet. But turns out microorganisms can handle it. Scientists got interested in this again in the 70s when they found rocks from Mars here on Earth that proved it's possible for rocks to travel between planets in our solar system. They figured out some ways that materials can be sent into space and survive the trip. So yeah, panspermia might be a real thing after all. Basically, scientists were wondering if living things could have hitched a ride between planets in our solar system. But for that to happen, microorganisms would need to survive being launched off of one planet, flying through space, and then landing on another planet. So, scientists have done a bunch of experiments trying to simulate all those crazy conditions. They found that spores can survive each stress individually, and even combined stresses can be simulated in the lab. For instance, microbes could totally survive the trip from Mars to Earth or any other habitable planet in our solar system. And get this, it's not just Mars and Earth that could be swapping germs. There are all these cool moons around Jupiter and Saturn that might be habitable too, like Io, Europa, Ganymede, Callisto, Titan, and Enceladus. Plus, microbes can survive in space for years with just a little UV protection, like they could be space superheroes with a dash of sunscreen. And if they're shielded by 6.5 feet of meteorite, they could live for 25 million years up there. That's longer than most marriages last. But wait, it gets crazier. Scientists found microbes on Earth that were brought back to life after 250 million years. That's like finding a fossil and then it jumps up and says, "Surprise!" All these discoveries have changed the game when it comes to finding life on other planets. We used to think life could only exist on cushy Earth-like planets. But now we know that extreme environments are fair game. And with our improved knowledge of these environments, we've been able to develop astrobiology, which is all about studying the origin, evolution, and distribution of life in the universe. Mars is one of the most promising places to look for life. We've found evidence that it used to have an environment similar to Earth, which means life could have flourished there. And get this, scientists found trace amounts of methane in the Martian atmosphere that could be produced by living organisms. Plus, they recently discovered subsurface liquid water lakes on Mars. So, maybe there are some Martian microbes chilling down there. Europa is another exciting prospect. It has a subsurface ocean that could support life similar to Earth's deep ocean hydrothermal vents or the Antarctic lake Vostok. And Enceladus has hydrothermal vents on its subsea floor and high-speed jets of water vapor and organic-rich particles gushing out from its southern region. So who knows what kind of alien creatures are lurking out there? Bottom line, space is wild and full of surprises. Who knows what kind of crazy stuff we'll find next? Yeah, that long explanation was all about panspermia. but that's definitely not the only theory about the origins of life in space. There's just panspermia theory, but there's also directed panspermia. This theory is a bit crazy though. It suggests that life on Earth was deliberately seeded by an advanced extraterrestrial civilization. This idea is based on the assumption that life is rare in the universe and that it's unlikely to have originated on its own on Earth. Directed panspermia is basically the idea that dudes from other planets intentionally sent life to Earth. I'm not kidding you. Some people think that extraterrestrial beings might have purposely sent microorganisms or even whole organisms to our planet to kickstart life here. The idea is that those dudes might have wanted to spread life throughout the universe, and Earth was just one of their stops. It's kind of like intergalactic gardening. They planted the seeds of life and let it grow. Now, this theory might sound a little out there, but some scientists actually take it seriously. They argue that it's possible that life on Earth is too complex to have just randomly formed on its own, and that an outside force had to have played a role. I personally prefer classic panspermia theory over this one. There's another theory called chemical evolution, and it suggests that life on Earth originated from simple organic molecules that formed spontaneously in the early Earth's atmosphere or in space. These molecules then combined and evolved into more complex structures, eventually leading to the formation of living organisms. The conditions on early Earth were different from what we see today. The atmosphere was mostly composed of gases like methane, ammonia, and carbon dioxide, and there was no oxygen. These conditions were conducive to the formation of organic molecules. One of the most famous experiments that supported the chemical evolution theory was the Miller-Urey experiment in 1952. In this experiment, Stanley Miller and Harold Urey simulated the early Earth's atmosphere in a laboratory and produced amino acids, which are the building blocks of proteins. This experiment demonstrated that organic molecules could be formed from simple inorganic compounds under conditions similar to those found on early Earth. Over time, these simple organic molecules combined and evolved into more complex structures, eventually leading to the formation of living organisms. This process is believed to have taken millions of years and involved many intermediate steps. While chemical evolution is still a theory, and there are still many questions to be answered about the origins of life, it provides a plausible explanation for how life could have arisen from non-living matter. Hey, ready for the next theory? Meet hydrothermal vent theory. This one suggests that life on Earth originated near hydrothermal vents on the ocean floor. These vents provide a unique environment where chemicals and minerals mix with hot water, creating conditions that could have supported the formation of organic molecules and the evolution of life. This theory is another idea about how life could have started on Earth. Basically, it suggests that deep under the ocean, there are these hot vents where water, heated by the Earth's core, comes out. These vents are full of minerals and chemicals that could have provided the perfect conditions for life to begin. Scientists think that the first living organisms could have started around these vents, using chemicals and minerals to create energy. Over time, these organisms evolved and spread out into other parts of the ocean. The hydrothermal vent theory is still being studied and debated, but it's an exciting idea that could help us understand how life began on our planet. The last, but not the least, RNA world hypothesis. This theory suggests that RNA, aka ribonucleic acid, was the first self-replicating molecule that led to the evolution of life on Earth. RNA is capable of both storing genetic information and catalyzing chemical reactions, making it a possible precursor to DNA and proteins. Basically, the name of this hypothesis is a fancy way of saying that life on Earth might have started with a molecule called RNA. RNA is like a cousin to DNA, which is what makes up our genes. Scientists think that RNA might have been the first molecule that could make copies of itself, which is a key part of how life works. The idea is that in the early days of Earth, there were all these chemicals and stuff floating around, and somehow these chemicals combined to make RNA. Then, because RNA could make copies of itself, it started to spread and evolve into more complex forms of life. It's still just a theory, but it's a pretty cool one. And who knows, maybe we'll find out one day that it's how we all got here.
On a cold January night in 1978, two neighboring military installations, Fort Dix Army Base and McGuire Air Force Base in New Jersey, became the stage for events that might have forever altered our understanding of extraterrestrial presence on Earth. Known as the Fort Dix Incident, this case remains one of the most enigmatic and heavily classified stories in military UFO encounters. A quiet night, shattered by the unexplained. Around 3 a.m. on January 18, 1978, Security Patrol Officer Sergeant Jeffrey Morse was conducting a routine perimeter check at McGuire Air Force Base. Everything seemed normal until radio chatter reported unidentified flying objects hovering over nearby Fort Dix, moving in tight formation and emitting an eerie bluish-green glow. Radar operators soon confirmed the anomaly. These objects maneuvered in ways no known aircraft of the time could. They hovered, changed direction abruptly, and vanished from radar screens as if toying with their observers. A close encounter turns violent. By 3:30 a.m., the situation escalated dramatically. A military police officer at Fort Dix, patrolling a remote section of the base, radioed that an oval-shaped object with no visible features had descended over his vehicle. Suddenly, a humanoid figure, about 4 feet tall, with grayish-brown skin, an oversized head, and elongated arms, appeared in front of him. Panicked, the MP drew his sidearm and fired 5 rounds into the being, followed by a 6th shot at the hovering craft. Immediately, the UFO shot upward and vanished, while the wounded creature fled toward the fence, separating the two bases. The cleanup operation. Within minutes, a team of unidentified soldiers in blue berets, with no insignia, arrived, cordoning off the area and pushing back regular personnel, including Morse. Witnesses later described how the team sprayed the body with an unknown substance, covered it with a white sheet, and placed it inside a large metallic container marked with blue symbols. By dawn, the container was loaded onto a C-141 cargo plane bound for Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, a facility long rumored to house classified UFO-related materials. Aftermath: enforced silence. 2 days later, Morse and other witnesses were flown to Wright-Patterson for interrogation. In a stark room facing 3 men, one a silent civilian with a pipe, Morse was forced to sign a lifetime non-disclosure agreement. Soon after, all involved personnel were reassigned to overseas bases, effectively scattering them across the globe. Morse was sent to Okinawa, Japan, where he spent 2 years before finally breaking his silence. Fact or fiction? In 1980, Morse reached out to UFO researcher Leonard Stringfield, sharing his account. His story gained credibility when Major George Filaire, an intelligence officer stationed at McGuire, confirmed unusual activity that night, mentioning that something was found dead on the runway, though details were withheld from him. Skeptics argue the incident could have been a test of a military biodrone or experimental entity, a psychological operation, PSYOP, to study human reactions, an elaborate hoax or misidentification, yet the military's extreme response, immediate witness isolation, rapid evidence removal, and lifetime gag orders suggests something far more extraordinary. Conclusion: a secret still waiting to be uncovered. Over 45 years later, the Fort Dix incident remains buried in secrecy. If Morse's account is true, this could be the first documented case of military personnel killing a potential extraterrestrial being. Until classified documents surface, key questions linger. Was this a genuine extraterrestrial encounter, or an elaborate cover-up for advanced military technology? One thing is certain: that night in 1978 changed the lives of those involved and left behind more questions than answers. What do you think? Could this really have happened? Or is it just another military urban legend?
According to the theory of panspermia, life could have been brought to Earth by a meteorite, comet, or asteroid from a different region of space. At the moment, this idea remains purely theoretical, but let's figure out if it could actually turn out to be true. Traditionally, exobiologists, those who are focused on searching for life outside Earth, have been trying to explore the possibility of life on Mars or in the subsurface oceans of Saturn's and Jupiter's icy moons. But simple life could be much more widespread. It could be drifting through interplanetary space right now, in the form of dormant bacteria and spores. Several scientists have noted that the ultra-harsh environment of space is likely to severely damage the DNA and RNA of such spores and microorganisms. Others believe that since enough microbes could be traveling in a dust cloud, some of them could survive in their original form. There are several types of panspermia. For example, lithopanspermia proposes that some kind of microbic life could exist in debris blasted into the cosmos after planetary collisions with comets and asteroids. Radiopanspermia claims that organisms might be able to travel through space with the help of radiation coming from stars. But in this case, it's unclear how the effect of dangerous ultraviolet and X-ray radiation, combined with the vacuum of space, doesn't totally destroy microorganisms. There's also pseudopanspermia. According to it, organic building blocks of life appear in interstellar clouds of dust. They get transported to the surfaces of planets, and life starts developing there. It sounds really fascinating, but is there any evidence for the panspermia theory? Well, there have been a few orbital experiments. For example, from 2008 to 2016, the samples gathered by EXPOSE, special equipment mounted outside the International Space Station and dedicated to astrobiology, were exposed to the conditions of space. After that, they were returned to Earth from the ISS. It turned out that some of them had survived those severe conditions. There was even a case when 100% of bacterial spores placed in Mars-like conditions were still capable of life. Also, some seeds survived and were later grown as plants on Earth. There have also been exostack experiments on the U.S. Long-Duration Exposure Facility satellite and biopan experiments on Russian photon capsules. They have shown that with minimal protection, spores, lichens, and even minuscule animals, such as tardigrades, might be able to survive in space for as long as several years. A piece of Surveyor 3 lunar lander was brought back to Earth in 1969 by the Apollo 12 mission. Shockingly, it contained an Earth bacterium that had survived unprotected for more than 2 years on the airless surface. At the same time, this bacterium could have come from laboratory contamination on arrival back on Earth. The Indian Space Research Organization carried out a search for space microorganisms too. It was done at stratospheric altitudes via balloon flights. The results showed that living interplanetary cells existed in air samples taken from heights of above 25 miles. Normally, air from lower levels of the atmosphere can't be transported there, so this discovery seemed to prove the theory of panspermia. But in 2010, NASA atmospheric sampling before and after hurricanes proved that under certain circumstances, Earth bacteria could actually be transported very high into the upper levels of the atmosphere. One of the main arguments against panspermia is that if this theory was correct, all life found throughout the solar system would have a common origin and share main biochemical characteristics like genetic code. It doesn't sound plausible. Many specialists believe that only the presence of astronaut explorers on the surfaces of, let's say, Mars, Europa, or Enceladus can properly solve the question of life in the solar system. They can compare any life forms found with Earth-type life, which can turn out to be a real test of panspermia. In any case, until probes finally find direct proof of spaceborne life, the panspermia theory will remain unproven.
There is hardly any other place as mysterious as Area 51, a highly classified U.S. Air Force military facility in Nevada. For a long time, the U.S. government didn't even admit it existed. It was shrouded in secrecy, causing all kinds of wild rumors. It wasn't until 2013 that they finally acknowledged both the base and the name Area 51. All thanks to a Freedom of Information Act request, a way regular people or organizations can officially ask the government to share information about what they're up to. What happens there is still super secret. The public is kept out with warning signs, electronic surveillance, and armed guards. Flying over Area 51 is also off limits, but these days, you can now see it on satellite images. The base even has massive runways, some as long as 12,000 feet. Area 51 has become the center of countless conspiracy theories because of its secretive nature and its ties to classified military projects. According to some of the most popular theories, it's used for storage, examination, and reverse engineering of alien spacecraft and the study of extraterrestrial beings. Other theories claim that joint projects with aliens are conducted there. Some ideas involve experiments in weather control, time travel, and teleportation, as well as work on exotic propulsion systems. Many of these theories focus on supposed underground facilities at Groom Lake or nearby Papoose Lake, known as S4. Some of the wilder claims include a secret underground railroad and a hidden airstrip that disappears when water is sprayed on it. In the mid-1950s, when civilian aircraft flew at lower altitudes and military aircraft like the U-2 flew higher, UFO sightings increased. Pilots often reported seeing strange objects, especially during the early evening when the U-2's reflective wings appeared to glow in the setting sun. The Air Force's Project Blue Book investigated many of these sightings, and while they couldn't explain everything, they did eliminate UFO reports caused by high-altitude aircraft. Their wide, disc-shaped fuselage and extreme speeds of over 2,000 miles per hour made them look otherworldly when reflecting sunlight. The rumors surrounding Area 51 probably contributed to keeping the base's operations shrouded in secrecy. In 1989, Bob Lazar claimed to have worked at a secret facility within Area 51 known as Sector 4, located underground near Papoose Lake in Nevada. He said that he had been hired to study alien spacecraft that had been recovered from a crash. According to him, he worked on a UFO that was powered by a mysterious element not found on Earth. In addition to Lazar, there was an interview with a 71-year-old mechanical engineer who claimed to have worked at Area 51 during the 1950s. He described working on a flying disc simulator based on a crashed extraterrestrial craft. He claimed that the simulator was used to train military pilots to fly alien technology. The engineer also mentioned interacting with an alien being called J-Rod, a telepathic translator. These claims added to the growing belief that Area 51 was not only a military testing facility, but also involved in extraterrestrial research. In 2004, Dan Crane claimed that he had worked at Area 51 on a project involving the cloning of alien viruses. He also asserted that he worked alongside J-Rod during his time at the facility. However, his academic credentials are unclear, and he was allegedly working as a parole officer in Las Vegas while claiming to be earning a PhD. In 2019, a viral Facebook event called for people to storm the base to see the aliens. It was named Storm Area 51, They Can't Stop All of Us. They plan to rush the gates of Area 51 and force the government to reveal its secrets about extraterrestrials. The U.S. Air Force, however, strongly discouraged people from attempting to trespass, warning of legal consequences, and the storming of Area 51 never happened.
We've been dreaming about life on Mars for a long time. Not only about growing potatoes there in the future, but also about all the potatoes that could have been there in the past. Has there ever been life on Mars? Recently, scientists have found something that could be evidence of that. Let's find out what happened. Mars is the fourth planet from the Sun. A human hasn't set foot on Mars yet, but robots have set their wheels. The first spacecraft that visited the Red Planet were NASA Viking landers. They flew there back in 1976 and sent us a lot of interesting data. Back then, we didn't know anything about Mars. To us, it looked like a cold, lifeless desert. But since we're so similar, scientists began to wonder, has it always been like this? Or is it possible that once Mars used to be thriving and full of life? And in 2022, NASA's Mars rover Perseverance found something that could shed a light on this mystery. But first of all, what is Perseverance? Scientists have suggested that if there was life on Mars once, it's unlikely that it could simply disappear without a trace. It must have left some traces, perhaps underground, where they would be protected from radioactive solar tantrums and other nastiness. So we need to check the rocks. It's important to note that we aren't looking for life on Mars right now. There most likely isn't any. Instead, we want to look into the distant past of our twin planet. We're talking billions of years ago, when Mars could have been warm, green, and far from lifeless. In other words, we have to find dead microbes and various chemical compounds similar to ones on the Earth. This is the mission of our main character, Perseverance. It arrived on Mars in February of 2021. The spacecraft landed on the bottom of the 30-mile-wide Jezero crater, and after landing, it scooted over to the west, to the place that prompted scientists to choose Jezero for research. This place is a dried-up river delta, and this former river is already more than 3.5 billion years old. The Jezero crater itself was once a large lake. Yup, apparently there was life on Mars, and scientists have suggested that these places would be perfect as bodyguards of microbes. That's exactly what bacteria do on Earth. They hide, being still in the depths of lakes and ponds, so we could probably find traces there. The researchers believe that this particular lake has the highest scientific value in the entire mission. The highest chance to find rocks on which such bacteria could survive is here in Jezero. So Perseverance went to the delta. The row wasn't easy though. The rover missed a little and landed further than planned. As one famous movie said, "This little maneuver's going to cost us 51 years." Fortunately, Perseverance took only 1 year, and on the way, it was able to explore Jezero a little. The rover uses a complex built-in tool to explore the world. The tool is called Scanning Habitable Environments with Raman and Luminescence for Organics and Chemicals, or just SHERLOC. Boy, NASA sure loves its acronyms. As the device approached the delta, the signal of organic molecules became stronger. Soon, these signals were everywhere, and besides, they were the brightest that the scientists have ever seen. What does it mean? Elementary, my dear Watson. You know, Sherlock. It's time to dig. Since July 2021, Perseverance has drilled and collected 4 thin cores of sedimentary rock. The total number of collected rocks at the moment is 12. This is the first time in history that we're collecting something like this on another planet. These 4 cores were found on 2 rocks called Skinner Ridge and Wildcat Ridge. The first pair of cores, the ones from the Skinner Ridge, don't seem very interesting at first glance. They're quite close to what we can find in many places on Earth. However, if we look at them closer, we'll see that they're dotted with round grains of some dark material. These dark grains could have once been deposited on them by an ancient river, the same one that flowed into Jezero. It's possible that the river brought them from places hundreds of miles away from Jezero, and that's pretty cool. If we study these cores, we'll be able to learn even more about the far corners of Mars. Well, there are no corners on it, but you get the idea. Then, in April 2022, Perseverance did arrive at the delta, and then scientists finally found what they were looking for. The discovery, to put it mildly, excited them. they found two more cores, which held organic substances. This pair was taken from the Wildcat Ridge. It's found very close to the Skinner Ridge, but the two rocks are quite different from each other. These samples are lighter in color and more uniform. Most likely, they're mudstone, an unusual rock similar to clay, but harder and unable to absorb water. They're also finer grained than the cores of the Skinner Ridge. Why does it matter? Because the finer the grains in the stone, the more likely it is that there may be some traces of a past life in it. On Earth, fine-grained stones most often lie on the bottoms of ponds and in similar places. There, they can preserve the remains of dead organisms and similar stuff for years. And this is exactly what we found on them. Additionally, according to scientists, there was more organic matter in these two cores than in any other place studied by Perseverance so far. It probably accumulated there while the lake was gradually evaporating billions of years ago. So, there really was life on Mars? Well, let's slow down a little. Organic substances are molecules holding carbon. And yes, on Earth, they're most often associated with life, but not always. Sometimes they can form as a result of other things. Therefore, we cannot say for sure whether there was life on Mars. We don't know if these molecules really remain from some Martian microbes, or if they're the result of some other things. But the discovery is still very significant. We have to literally keep digging this way. To learn more about this organic matter, scientists need to collect a couple more samples of fine-grained rock. It would also be great to study the material lying around these former reservoirs. Perseverance has already moved to another area, to a place with a beautiful name, Enchanted Lake. Now it needs to look for similar things there. It will also continue to study Lake Jezero. Eventually, Perseverance will climb to the top of the delta and then continue exploring ancient sites outside the crater. Sometime before the end of 2022, Perseverance will probably have 6 or more samples of the Martian cores. Unfortunately, its tools, though complex, are quite limited. This data alone won't be enough for us to get a complete picture. Therefore, NASA plans to send other spacecraft to Jezero in the coming years. Together with the European Space Agency, they're working on the next robotic mission, known as the Mars Sample Return. The name speaks for itself. These devices will arrive and take away all the test tubes from the old Prospector Perseverance. After that, these samples will be delivered to Earth, though not by Amazon Prime, and then scientists will be able to analyze them in advanced laboratories. However, all this will take a really long time. The launch of this mission is scheduled for 2027-2028, and the spacecrafts won't be able to return until 2033. But if everything goes well, it will be the first samples in history delivered to Earth from Mars. In other words, there's still enough space for research, literally. And yes, we don't yet know the true meaning of these finds. But that's why the entire mission was created, right? And who knows? Maybe in a few years we'll finally find out the truth about what happened on Mars billions of years ago. Ooh, check out The Martian! Made you look. Look.
What if some of the brightest minds in Europe believed they had been chosen to receive messages from aliens? In the 1960s, a group of intellectuals in Spain was convinced that beings from the planet Umo were reaching out to them, and the story only gets stranger from there. 1960s Spain was a breeding ground for what is known as the UFO fever, which had reached its peak in the United States during the 1950s with the Roswell incident. If you're not familiar with this famous case, we have a full video on our channel about it. The Spanish fever began with a UFO sighting, one that had been announced in advance, by letter. Yes, you heard that right. Days before the flying saucers appeared, Fernando Sesma, founder of the Society of Friends of the Space Visitors, received a series of strange typewritten letters. At first glance, they seemed ordinary, formal, precise, but as he read, he realized something astonishing. The letters claimed to come from extraterrestrial beings. Their authors introduced themselves as the Umetes, inhabitants of a planet called Umo, supposedly located in the Virgo constellation, 14 light-years away. They described their deep interest in studying humans but assured they had no intention of interfering with Earth's development. Then came the most shocking revelation: a specific date, location, and time when they would make their presence known. It wasn't just a cryptic message, it was a prediction of an imminent UFO sighting. Sesma and his group of space enthusiasts held meetings in the basement of Café Lyon, a space frequently visited by intellectuals of the time. There, beneath a mural of a smiling whale, they discussed topics such as spiritualism, the occult, symbolism, and, of course, extraterrestrials. The messages Sesma received from the Umites were shared at these gatherings. It was in one of these letters that announced their intention to make themselves visible. The Umites' flying saucers reportedly made 3 appearances. The first in 1950 near Digne, followed by sightings in Aluche in 1966 and San Jose de Valderas in 1967. The second sighting was witnessed by José Luis Jordan Peña, a researcher of parapsychology and ufology, as well as a journalist and contributor to paranormal magazines. Curiously, he was the one who claimed to have seen the flying saucer firsthand. Adding to the mystery, traces were allegedly found at the supposed landing site. A year later, the second sighting was documented in photographs taken by regular attendees of the Smiling Whale meetings. The images showed a spacecraft marked with the distinctive UMO symbol on its base, further fueling speculation. Beyond these sightings, the Umites' letters stood out for their sophistication. Addressed to experts and academics, they explored complex topics such as philosophy, technology, and scientific advancements in physics, electronics, and computational theory. Over 200 of these documents, supposedly written by aliens, remain accessible on the website umociencias.org. Among the letters available online, some feature colorful illustrated explanations, while others provide detailed insights into UMO's customs and traditions. Some go even further, questioning Earth's global power structures, promoting peace, and offering recommendations on how to build a better world, according to their extraterrestrial perspective. The UMO phenomenon didn't stay confined to letters and sightings. It spread across multiple countries and languages, gaining unexpected traction in the media. The extensive coverage led to an unusual level of public acceptance, turning the UMO affair into a widespread fascination. Even politics capitalized on the UFO craze. In 1989, at the height of Cold War tensions, the Soviet Union was allegedly visited by an Umit flying saucer in the city park of Voronezh. Several children claimed to have witnessed humanoid beings emerging from the craft, a story that quickly made headlines. Whether genuine or not, the incident conveniently aligned with a growing global obsession with extraterrestrial life. Its impact on politics, media, and intellectual circles was undeniable. But in 1993, the mastermind behind it all finally spoke. José Luis Jordan Peña publicly admitted that he had fabricated the entire story to bring complex debates to the scientific community. He also described it as a social experiment that had spiraled out of control, prompting him to put an end to it. You're probably wondering, what did he mean by spiraled out of control? Well, the UMO phenomenon was also exploited for sinister purposes by depraved cults, such as Edelweiss, a sect of fanatics who lured minors under the pretense of being extraterrestrial princes. This horrifying case was one of the main reasons Jordan Peña decided to reveal the truth about his writings. He admitted to using a voice distortion device to create a metallic resonance during phone calls and revealed that he wrote the letters on weekends, sending them from different locations during his travels. However, given the vast number of letters and their global reach, it's unlikely that he acted alone. Many of his explanations also remain frustratingly vague for Umide believers, who refuse to accept that Jordan Peña was solely responsible for all UMO communications. Even today, messages from UMO continue to appear on X and other media. Was it all just a hoax that spiraled out of control, or is someone, human or otherwise, still keeping the myth alive?
Something is happening on the Red Planet! Scientists believed that they knew nearly everything about its atmosphere, but a NASA rover has discovered something unexpected. There's more oxygen on Mars than they thought, and it behaves in weird ways. In the spring and summer, oxygen levels go up even more, and no one knows why. Now, you might think that when there's oxygen in an atmosphere, It's mostly because there's life somewhere around, like trees on Earth that produce oxygen through photosynthesis. But on Mars, it's not that simple. Non-living processes can also create oxygen, so we can't surely say that its presence means there's life on Mars. Mars has long been one of the main candidates when it comes to looking for signs of extraterrestrial life. Back in the 90s, scientists announced they had spotted potential proof there could be life on Mars because of microbes they had found in a meteorite that had arrived from the red planet. It looked like they had found fossils of bacteria. They actually stumbled upon tiny crystals of magnetite in the meteorite, which they believed could only have been produced by living organisms. It was such a mind-boggling discovery. People were excited, but many were also skeptical. It didn't prove there really was life on the red planet. Maybe there was life there a long time ago. The meteorite is thought to have originally formed on Mars billions of years ago, and to have landed on Earth thousands of years ago. Skeptics soon started to pick apart the evidence and eventually found some things that didn't make sense. For example, these magnetite crystals. No one could be sure how they formed. Why do they have to be bacteria? Some research has shown they could be the result of shock waves. Recently, the Perseverance rover has collected a couple of new rock samples from the Jezero crater on Mars. The theory says that about 3 billion years ago, before the red planet lost most of its atmosphere and basically just dried out, there was a big lake with a river flowing from it in that area. Whoa, what a great environment for life! Perseverance studied mud samples it had found on the bottom of the evaporated saltwater lake. Scientists were amazed to see a record number of sulfate molecules, something we usually find in mollusk shells on our home planet. Such organisms evolved a couple of 100 million years ago, but maybe there was a time when some of their space ancestors lived in water bodies on Mars. Mars has weaker gravity than Earth, which means these weird species could have got really big there, way bigger than their Earth cousins. Gravity plays a significant role when it comes to limiting the size of organisms. Bigger organisms need more energy to move against gravitational forces, but the creatures that may have lived there long ago are just a mix of hypothesis and our imagination, something that's still really hard to prove. Meet the Curiosity rover, another robot NASA is using to explore Mars. Curiosity has been in charge of measuring the composition of the atmosphere of the red planet for many years now. The rover has discovered that it mostly consists of carbon dioxide and a little bit of nitrogen and argon. The atmosphere of Mars has only 0.1% of oxygen, since, as far as we know at the moment, Mars doesn't have plants that could produce enough oxygen. But Curiosity has also discovered anomalies no one can really explain. It's found out that there are spikes in oxygen levels in the Gale crater during the Martian spring and summer. Every year, oxygen levels go up and down in unpredictable patterns there. What's even more interesting is that the oxygen spike is similar to a seasonal spike in methane, which is a gas we often associate with life on Earth. No wonder scientists are scratching their heads and wondering if there's a connection between the two gases, and if they both come from the same source on the Martian surface. Is there something big that breathes there? Come on, we'll be happy even with some small space worms in the soil. There's a type of salt called perchlorates in the Martian soil. Some scientists believe perchlorates might be responsible for the strange spikes in oxygen levels. But like with most things we know about space, it's just a theory. Also, scientists think that perchlorates breaking down in the Martian soil release oxygen too slowly to cause and explain the sudden increase in oxygen levels. One of the suspects is hydrogen peroxide, which is like water's unstable cousin. Hydrogen peroxide forms when sunlight breaks up carbon dioxide and water vapor in the Martian atmosphere. It can seep into the soil and stick to particles underground, which means it forms some kind of oxygen storage tank. Some data even show there are pockets of subsurface water in the Martian soil that may be hiding enough dissolved oxygen to actually support life. But even if the hydrogen peroxide could stay in the soil for millions of years, it would still only explain a small part of the increase in the level of oxygen. So you can't blame it for the whole thing. We can also take a look at an old experiment from the 1970s, where scientists found that moistening the Martian soil caused it to release a lot of oxygen. However, they did this experiment at a warmer temperature than the planet's average. And again, it doesn't explain how the oxygen spike keeps happening every year. None of the clues we have seems to fit the case. Mars may not have enough of its own oxygen, but it's possible to make this gas there. NASA conducted a small experiment where they tried and managed to produce oxygen on Mars. MOXIE is a device that can make oxygen on Mars. It managed to produce enough oxygen for an astronaut to breathe for 100 minutes. This awesome device worked in pretty tough conditions, at night or during the day, at extreme temperatures, and during the crazy dust storms the red planet is known for. Despite all this, MOXIE still kept up with producing high-purity oxygen. MOXIE is a clever device that can make oxygen on Mars by taking in carbon dioxide from the planet's atmosphere and heating it up to incredibly high temperatures. This allows the device to pull oxygen atoms from the carbon dioxide and produce breathable oxygen gas. If we want to use MOXIE to make enough oxygen for human missions to Mars, we need to make a bigger version of the device. But if we make it bigger, we might have trouble keeping it at the right temperature and making sure it heats up evenly without breaking. The ultimate goal would be to create an oxygen device that could continuously support a human mission for about 400 days. With a bigger version of MOXIE, we'd have enough oxygen to support crew members and even propel a return rocket to our home planet. When you see the dusty red surface of Mars, you can't say it's a place that hides liquid water underneath. Some say it's too cold for water to exist on Mars anyway. But there are stories that there could be a hidden world of liquid water, just like subglacial lakes in Antarctica. And to find out more, we might have to drill down about a mile beneath the surface. Unfortunately, it's not going to happen anytime soon. But in the meantime, scientists have been using a spacecraft called Mars Express to study radar reflections around the southern pole of Mars. The reflections seem to indicate there could be liquid water, and the planet's interior might be keeping it warm. But some claim it might just be rock. We hope there are underground lakes on Mars because it would be a perfect spot to look for life. After all, scientists have found bacteria living in subglacial lakes on Earth. But we don't know for sure how deep they are, or if they're just small veins of water in the ice. Only time and more exploration will tell.
This planet, yeah, the one right here, shouldn't exist, but it does. A newly discovered planet rotates around a star that's much smaller and dimmer than our Sun. The planet, however, is enormous. Such a tiny star couldn't create it, so it's like finding an ostrich egg in a chicken coop. A team at Penn State built a special tool called the Habitable Zone Planet Finder. It's an instrument that's supposed to find planets around dim, cool stars. It's connected to a big telescope in Texas. The tool looks at the light from these stars, which is mostly in the near-infrared, beyond what our eyes can see. This gadget can spot changes in a star's speed caused by a planet. If the star movement slightly changes, that means there must be a gravitational pull nearby. Years ago, this technique helped find the first known exoplanet around a star like our Sun. Today, we've improved this method to make more precise measurements. Our main goal is to find Earth-like planets. They should be rocky and located in habitable zones, areas around stars where liquid water could exist. The Doppler technique isn't that great at finding Earth-like worlds yet, but works well for cool, dim stars. And that's how we discovered the impossible LHS 3154b. Planets usually form in disks made of gas and dust in space. Picture a flat, spinning cloud of tiny particles. These particles come together and stick to each other, creating a flat, rotating disk. Over time, these tiny bits combine to form a solid core. This is the starting point for a planet. Once the core is there, it attracts more dust and even gas like hydrogen and helium. But making a planet this way isn't easy. They need a lot of stuff, mass, and materials. This process is called core accretion. Stars are a huge help in that process. Usually, big stars have more gravity, so they can gather more stuff to form planets. But the star we discovered recently isn't very big. It's 9 times smaller than our Sun. A star this small shouldn't have a big enough disk to make a heavy planet. To do that, its disk should have been at least 10 times bigger. But this heavy planet, LHS 3154b, exists. Now, this mysterious planet is 13 times heavier than our Earth. It's similar in size to Neptune. It's about 50 light-years away from us in the Hercules constellation, which, in space terms, is very close. The planet is also super close to its star, completing 1 year in almost 4 days. This discovery is making scientists rethink their ideas about how planets and stars come into existence. There are new theories coming around. For example, a theory called gravitational instability. It says that, instead of the pieces coming together bit by bit, the material in the disk collapses all at once, directly creating a planet. But even with this theory, it's hard to explain how such a heavy planet could form without a really massive disk. It'll take us some time to figure out the truth. This isn't the first planet that makes us doubt our theories. Recently, scientists found another planet called Hala. This planet is orbiting a star called Baekdu, and just like the previous one, it shouldn't really exist. It's way too close to its star. Stars change a lot during their lives. Normally, when a star becomes big and prepares to leave this world, it's called the red giant stage. A star like that tends to destroy or push away any nearby planets, creating a huge mess. Hala rotates around a red giant, and it should have been swallowed or destroyed by the expanding star a long time ago. But it's still hanging there. Even though Baekdu has already started burning helium and shrunk to a smaller size than expected, Hala isn't bothered in the slightest. Scientists call Hala the Forbidden Planet. This discovery challenges what we thought about how planets survive near aging stars. It raises 2 theories. One suggests that Baekdu was once 2 stars, a white dwarf and a red giant. Hala orbited them both, and they merged before the red giant fully expanded. This allowed Hala to survive because the extra helium from the white dwarf prevented the red giant from growing too much. The second theory says that Hala formed from the debris created when the 2 stars merged. In this scenario, Hala would be a very young planet orbiting an elderly star. Astronomers plan to continue studying Hala and look for more planets like that. Another oddball, besides me, is called LTT 9779b. This one scares us too because it's too shiny. The planet reflects 80% of the light from its star. Regular mirrors reflect from 85 to almost 100% of light, which means that this mysterious planet should look like a rough mirror, with aluminum or silver-like reflections. This is another Neptune-sized planet. It's located 268 light-years from us and was discovered by NASA's TESS spacecraft. It completes a full rotation around its star in just 19 hours. It's so close to its star that it's scorching hot, reaching temperatures over 3,600 degrees Fahrenheit. Normally, planets this close lose their atmosphere and turn into bare rocks. But this one breaks the rules again. Now this time, we know the secret of its survival. It's because of the planet's shiny metallic clouds, which are made of glass and titanium salt. These clouds rain titanium onto its hot surface. They also reflect a lot of the light, preventing the planet from getting too hot and losing its atmosphere. It's like having a mirror shield. This planet's size also surprised scientists. It's way bigger than Earth. Other planets this close to their stars are either much bigger gas giants or small rocky planets. This planet is a smaller gas giant, and scientists didn't expect it to exist so close to its star. This is the shiniest planet ever found, even shinier than Venus. But despite its cool appearance, it's probably not a friendly place for life because of its extreme temperatures and strange metallic rain. And our final rule breaker is a planet called WASP 107b. Scientists discovered it using the James Webb Space Telescope. It's located around 208 light-years from us in the Virgo constellation. It's also fast and completes an orbit around its star in just 6 days. This is a super-Neptune exoplanet. It's similar to Jupiter in some ways, including the same size and scorching hot temperatures. But the main difference is that it's much lighter, weaker, and less dense. This is the least dense planet we've discovered so far. After researching some more, we also found that it has a tail. The helium on the planet extends beyond the transit egress. The planet is slowly losing its atmosphere due to extreme ultraviolet radiation from the star. This creates a comet-like tail. So, it looks like a fluffy comet. But that was just the beginning. The planet's low density, or fluffiness, allowed astronomers to study its atmosphere in detail. They found some surprising things, like water vapor and clouds made of fine silicate particles, which are like really fine-grained sand. The planet's host star doesn't emit a lot of high-energy light. But since WASP 107b is so loose, the light can penetrate deep into its atmosphere. This creates sulfur dioxide that smell when you light a match. In other words, it's a fluffy planet that rains sand and smells like matches. The researchers think the sand clouds in the atmosphere form in a similar way to clouds on Earth. They just have droplets of sand instead of water. These sand droplets condense, fall, turn into silicate vapor in hot layers within the planet, and then rise again to form clouds once more. And, once again, this planet couldn't have formed in its current spot. Astronomers say that it likely moved closer to its star from a birth orbit because it was attracted by some heavier neighbor. It also follows a retrograde orbit, meaning it orbits in the opposite direction to its star's rotation. All these discoveries are changing how we understand planets and their atmospheres, giving us new insights into the mysteries of our own solar system.
The United States Air Force came up with the term UFO, unidentified flying object, back in 1953, and over time, it's come to mean anything that might hint at aliens trying to contact us. There's an actual field called ufology, dedicated to studying these kinds of things. But there's an unexpected twist. The authorities don't really like the term UFO anymore. Instead, they've switched to calling them UAP, which stands for Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon. It sure sounds more professional, doesn't it? It also kind of distances the term from decades of wild alien theories tied to UFOs. Now, if you're into UFOs or UAPs, this is actually a pretty exciting time. Back in December 2020, when the government passed a huge spending bill, there was a little clause tucked in there about UFOs. Basically, it called for more transparency and pushed agencies to share what they know. And shockingly, the CIA has recently dumped all of its declassified UFO documents online. That's 2,780 pages of material now available to the public, and you can find it all on a site called the Black Vault. It's run by John Greenewald Jr., a guy who's basically dedicated his life to collecting and sharing UFO-related info. But of course, getting those documents wasn't easy. Greenewald had to file over 10,000 Freedom of Information Act requests to pry them out of the government's hands. He says the whole process was like pulling teeth, and even now, the files aren't exactly user-friendly. They're in an outdated format, multi-page TIFF files, and the text scans are messy, making it hard to search through them. To help, Greenewald converted the whole collection into 713 PDFs. But even then, some of the documents were poorly photocopied, which made it tricky to dig into the details. Still, UFO fans have already uncovered some wild stuff. One document mentions a Bosnian fugitive claiming to have had contact with aliens. According to the document, at the time it was written, Radovan Karadzic remained alive, but the authorities didn't know where he was. The rumors of his near capture lacked evidence, and NATO countries blamed each other for failing to act. Critics saw the hunt for Karadzic as part of a political circus, with no real effort to bring him to justice. But the real question is whether they didn't want to, or just couldn't, because he wasn't on Earth anymore. Another document talks about mysterious explosions at midnight in a small Russian town. On the 12th of April, a powerful midnight explosion shook Sassovo, a small city in Russia's Ryazan region. The blast caused a lot of damage. It ripped off roofs, shattered windows, and rocked buildings like an earthquake. No one was seriously injured, but many people were shocked. Schools and kindergartens were closed, and buildings were temporarily patched with plastic sheeting. At the time when the document was written, the cause of the explosion was still a mystery. Theories ranged from buried World War II munitions, a falling air bomb, a meteorite, or a fiery UFO sighting reported by locals. Military experts suspected ammonium nitrate stored nearby, though this fertilizer had been safely used for years. A massive crater, 92 feet wide and 13 feet deep, was the only evidence of the disaster. One of the most intriguing finds is a 1970s document showing the Assistant Deputy Director for Science and Technology personally receiving some mysterious UFO-related info. But of course, like most government releases, a lot of the good stuff is blacked out. Greenewald still hopes and fights to get those redacted sections declassified. There must be something special about that information. As you see, digging into this data takes a lot of patience. You're basically wasting hours and hours of your life hoping to find something that stands out. But if you're still curious, check out the Black Vault. You might discover something mysterious and creepy in those thousands of pages.
For thousands of years, people knew only about the planets Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, which they could see using simple telescopes, or even by the naked eye if conditions were good. But in the late 18th century, a famous astronomer named Sir William Herschel discovered a new planet that was icy blue in color. At first, people thought it was a star, but later they realized it was a planet. Today, we know it as Uranus, a planet that's more than 19 times farther away from the Sun than Earth. It's so far away that it takes Uranus 84 years to complete one trip around the Sun. This astronomer also discovered many other interesting things in space, like double stars and nebulae. In the mid-1800s, scientists noticed something pulled Uranus and strangely tugged its orbit. They thought there must be another planet out there, and they used math to predict where it would be. Finally, in 1846, they found Neptune using a telescope. It was too faint to see with the naked eye because it was too far away from the Sun. It was all so exciting. Who knows how many other planets could be there, lurking in the darkness of our solar system? Back in the mid-1800s, astronomers noticed something unusual was happening in the sky. A small rocky planet named Mercury was behaving strangely. It didn't follow the predictable orbit that was expected of it. One of the astronomers was a brilliant French scientist named Urbain Le Verrier. He came up with a theory that there could be another planet in our solar system no one had yet discovered. It would be located somewhere between Mercury and the Sun. This hypothetical planet, which he named Vulcan after the Roman god of fire, would have an incredibly hot surface, and it could be a potential explanation for Mercury's strange behavior. He never surely claimed Vulcan was really the one thing disturbing the orbit of Mercury. But, excited by the possibility of discovering a new planet, astronomers all over the world took the idea of Vulcan. For a planet that didn't exist, people committed to developing ideas and getting information about it. Some scientists didn't think it was likely that they had missed another planet as big as Mercury. It would have been hard not to see it by then. But there was a tiny chance of a smaller planet existing inside Mercury's orbit that was too close to the Sun, so no one could see it. One theory said it was about 13 million miles away from the Sun. Mercury is the planet with the most eccentric orbit in our solar system, but the closest point it gets to the Sun is about 28.5 million miles. This means Vulcan would be under half of that distance. The theory moved on, saying that if Vulcan existed, it would orbit the Sun every 19 days and 18 hours, and its path would be tilted about 12 degrees relative to the path of other planets in our solar system. Vulcan's position at its furthest point from the Sun would still be too close to the Sun to be seen with the naked eye, even during twilight. The only chance of seeing Vulcan would be during a solar eclipse, or when it passed in front of the sun, which, as the theory said, would be 2 to 4 times a year. They had a theory that this mysterious planet was so close to the sun that it could only be seen during a total solar eclipse when the moon blocked out the sun's blinding glare. So, every time there was an eclipse, scientists would peer at the sun, hoping to catch a glimpse of Vulcan. They were trying really hard, but no matter what, they couldn't find this mysterious planet. Some astronomers claimed to have spotted it during eclipses, but no one could ever confirm or find evidence for that. The theory of Vulcan was left waiting for some better times. Einstein had a different idea. You know about his theory of general relativity, right? That's where he claimed gravity wasn't some sort of natural force, but a result of space-time curved because of the presence of giant space objects, like planets and stars. Planets circle around the sun in their usual orbit because space-time is curved. That means the planets are kind of falling towards the central star of our solar system. And Einstein tried to explain Mercury's unusual orbit using his own theory of relativity. Unlike the other planets in our solar system, Mercury's orbit wasn't that circular. Instead, it seemed to wobble slightly, as if there was an invisible force pulling it away. Einstein said this could be happening because the massive gravity of our sun was actually curving the fabric of space-time around it. He claimed it's possible this changed Mercury's orbit a little bit. It took the scientific community a while to test this theory, but it eventually seemed like the most plausible explanation. Even though Einstein's theory gave us a more elegant explanation for Mercury's strange orbit, some scientists were still holding out hope for Vulcan. It was especially hard to let go of the idea of Vulcan because Mercury is also the planet that's really hard to see from where we're standing. But later, more and more scientists started accepting Einstein's theory above their imagination, and they would observe a total solar eclipse specifically to test Einstein's theory of relativity, not because of Vulcan. And Vulcan is not the only hypothetical planet everyone was talking about. In the newer age, some believe there could be a mysterious planet lurking in the outer part of our solar system, but this one is more likely to exist. No one has seen it directly yet, but computer simulations show this so-called Planet 9, or Planet X, is probably somewhere there beyond Neptune. Neptune and Planet X could be similar in size. Planet X could be 10 times more massive than Earth and circles around our Sun in an elongated shape, which is on average 20 times farther from the Sun than Neptune. A year there may last between 10,000 to 20,000 Earth years. By comparison, a year on Neptune lasts 165 Earth years. Something this big moving out there beyond Neptune could explain the unusual orbits of smaller objects in the Kuiper Belt. The Kuiper Belt is the area of our solar system beyond Neptune and where it orbits. And there are most likely many asteroids, comets, and some other smaller bodies there, mostly made of ice. There was another hypothetical planet called Nibiru. Remember those rumors that the world could end back in 2012? One of the popular scenarios was Nibiru, which some claimed would hit our home planet at the end of the year. Of course, nothing happened. We're still here, all set and good, but the idea of Nibiru seemed interesting. Stories started in the 1970s when a man named Zecharia Sitchin mentioned Nibiru in his book, The 12th Planet, claiming it orbits the Sun every 3,600 years. But there's no chance a planet with such an eccentric orbit wouldn't disrupt other planets in our solar system with its gravity. And if it was really coming that close to Earth in 2012, we were supposed to be able to see it with the naked eye. Some simple calculations showed Nibiru would have been nearly as bright as Mars at its dimmest and brighter than the faintest stars you see from a city. Oh well, maybe we'll have more luck in the next 3,500 and something years. In 2011, a comet named Elenin appeared that many people thought could be Nibiru. But when you're looking at comets and planets through a telescope, you see they appear differently. A comet has a coma, which is a gas atmosphere, together with a tail, something a planet doesn't have. Plus, this comet didn't slam into the Earth. It came too close to our Sun and fell apart. The leftover pieces will continue moving on their way to the outer solar system for the next 12,000 years.
So, we might be getting closer to finding a massive icy planet beyond Neptune's orbit. Sorry Pluto, still not you. Recently, some universe mapping using data from a telescope in Hawaii eliminated about 78% of the possible locations for this mysterious Waldo from space. Some people call it Planet 9, while others prefer Planet X. Either way, it's been causing controversy since its existence was first proposed, and that is mainly because no study so far can answer the big question: does it really exist? If discovered, Planet 9 would rank as the 5th largest planet in our solar system, with a mass 10 times that of Earth. It's also theorized to be gaseous, like Uranus. The initial study on Planet 9, dating back to 2016, suggests that this colossal new planet orbits the Sun 29 times farther out than Neptune, which sits at about 2.8 billion miles. As a result, the Planet 9 would take between 10,000 and 20,000 years to complete a single orbit around the Sun. If confirmed, this yet-to-be-understood world would dominate a region larger than any other known planet in our cosmic neighborhood. These are all intriguing hypotheses, but without a single piece of evidence or observation to back them up. Before dismissing this as a wild guess, it is important to note that these researchers relied on complex mathematical modeling and computer simulations to speculate about the planet's characteristics, because that's what they do. The hypothetical presence of this planet would explain various mysterious features located beyond Neptune. We are specifically talking about the Kuiper Belt, a huge donut-shaped region filled with icy debris left over from the formation of the solar system, including comets and dwarf planets like Pluto. What happens is that the 6 farthest objects in the Kuiper Belt exhibit elliptical orbits that are all oriented in a similar direction within physical space and tilted approximately 30 degrees downward relative to the orbital plane of our 8 known planets. What's strange here is that, despite their distinct orbital velocities around the solar system, they maintain this alignment. The likelihood of such alignment occurring randomly is extremely low, around 0.007%. So, here comes Planet 9, a hypothetical massive celestial body that offers a plausible explanation for this strange phenomenon, potentially exerting gravitational influence to shape these orbits. The initial theory didn't hold up for long, facing accusations of observational bias and calculation errors. Then, in 2017, another study popped up, sparking back the idea that maybe Planet 9 is out there after all. This time, Spanish astronomers tried a novel approach, focusing on observing extreme trans-Neptunian objects. These celestial bodies orbit the Sun in highly stretched elliptical paths, with average distances exceeding 13 billion miles. The research suggests that the distances between these objects' nodes and the Sun might provide clues to Planet 9's location. You see, these nodes are the points where a celestial body's orbit intersects the solar system's plane. When these objects reach these points, they're more likely to interact with other solar system bodies, potentially causing significant changes in their orbits or even collisions. So, if the trajectory of these extreme trans-Neptunian objects remains stable, everything's fine. But if it's not, well, that's a sign that something else, something big, is messing with their path. And that's exactly what the research found. There is something unseen out there, throwing these objects off course. And that something could be a planet, chilling at a distance between 300 to 400 times farther from the Sun than Earth. To this day, the study of the extreme trans-Neptunian objects is the strongest evidence we've got for Planet 9's existence. And if you're still not convinced by this theory, know that strange motions like these have led to planetary discoveries before. Neptune, for instance, was spotted because Uranus's motion didn't quite agree with the predictions of Newtonian gravity. But the deflection of its orbit could be explained if it was caused by a pull of an undiscovered planet. And just like that, we discovered Neptune. Now, the year is 2021, and there's all this buzz about Planet 9 again. After correcting some old guesses, studies are now leaning towards the idea that this mystery world follows an epic loop around the Sun every 7,000 years. That is massive news, because it means this planet might be closer than we ever thought, making it easier for our telescopes to spot it. The paper also suggests there is a whopping 99% chance that the funky orbits of these distant objects are all because of this unseen planet, not just some cosmic coincidence. Now, the odds of this whole situation being a fluke are down to a 1 in 250 chance, which is much better than the 1 in 10,000 chance back in 2016. All these optimistic numbers have brought us to where we are today, keeping our hopes and working on better equipment to continue the mission of spotting Planet 9. As mentioned earlier, researchers in Hawaii created some kind of treasure map utilizing the Panoramic Survey Telescope and Rapid Response System to eliminate 78% of its locations. This is great news, considering how challenging it is to find a planet-sized needle in a cosmic haystack. But unfortunately, Planet 9's presence remains a ghost in the dark outer reaches of our solar system. Enthusiasts are still convinced of its existence and believe it is only a matter of time before we celebrate the discovery of Earth's new cosmic cousin. They're putting their hopes on the Vera C. Rubin Observatory, which is currently under construction in Chile and is scheduled to begin science operations in late 2025. Over the course of 10 years, this observatory will scan the entire southern hemisphere sky every few nights with a 27-foot, fast-moving telescope equipped with the largest digital camera in the world. The idea is to catalog everything in the solar system, reaching out to and beyond Neptune, and tracking the movements of millions of celestial objects, including space junk, asteroids, comets, and stars. If Planet 9 is indeed out there, this next-generation telescope could be the one to find it. The existence of this mysterious planet is far from being universally accepted in the scientific community. That is simply because Planet 9 isn't the only explanation for the strange phenomenon occurring beyond Neptune. One theory suggests that a group of distant objects, such as dwarf planets, comets, and moons, might be collectively influencing the orbits of the extreme trans-Neptunian objects. Others believe that a black hole is behind all this. These compressed masses are some of the densest objects in the universe, potentially capable of affecting the orbits of other masses, like how this supposed ghost Planet 9 is believed to be doing. Another bold perspective suggests that our current understanding of the laws of gravity is flawed, actually incomplete. This theory, known as modified Newtonian dynamics, proposes that these distant icy objects exhibit strange behavior not due to influence from another planet, but rather because the immense gravitational field of the Milky Way is influencing them. However, even supporters of this theory acknowledge that it is too early to draw firm conclusions, and much more extensive research is still required. While we continue our relentless hunt for Planet 9, some astronomers have taken it a step further, suggesting the existence of a hypothetical Planet 10. This world has a mass and size like that of Mars or Earth and is located on the edges of the Kuiper Belt. But the thing is, if this alleged Planet 10 is indeed as small as scientists believe, it might not have enough gravity to clear its orbit of debris. And that is pretty similar to what happens with Pluto, being one of the reasons why it got into trouble back in 2006. So yeah, it's better not to get too excited. This supposed Planet 10 might end up classified as another dwarf planet. Very recently, astronomers have found 3 potential super-Earth planets orbiting a somewhat close orange dwarf star. The term super-Earth is used to describe a planet beyond the solar system with a mass higher than that of Earth but below those of the ice giants of the solar system, Uranus and Neptune. An international team of researchers, led by Dr. Shweta Dalal from the University of Exeter, found that the exoplanets were orbiting star HD 48498, which is located around 55 light-years away from Earth. The planets travel around their star in 7, 38, and 151 Earth days, respectively. The study describing these findings appeared in the journal MinRes on the 24th of June, 2024. The coolest thing here is that the outermost exoplanet candidate orbits in the habitable zone of its host star, and the conditions there might be comfortable enough for liquid water to exist on the surface without boiling or freezing. Such habitable regions around stars are also known as the Goldilocks zone and are believed to be ideal for potentially supporting life. Another reason this discovery is so important is that the orange host star is like our Sun. But since it's an orange dwarf, it produces less radiation than our yellow dwarf star. It's also the closest planetary system to host a super-Earth in the habitable zone of a Sun-like star, which makes this discovery super exciting. It can help us move forward in our quest to locate habitable planets around solar-type stars. Who knows? Maybe this planet will be our new home one day. These potential super-Earths were detected thanks to the HARPS and Rocky Planet Search Program. Throughout a decade, the team taking part in this research has collected nearly 190 high-precision measurements using special equipment. By analyzing the spectrum of light coming from a star, astronomers can figure out whether it's moving toward us, this is known as blue shift, or away from us, that's what we call red shift. And still, to make sure their findings were correct, the team used lots of different methods and comparative analysis. Everything confirmed their conclusions. There indeed are 3 planetary candidates with minimum masses ranging from 5 to 11 times the mass of our home planet. The team also believes that the proximity of the star, together with the outermost planet's favorable orbit, can make this system a great target for future studies. Hopefully, further research will open doors for our understanding of planetary systems and the potential of life outside our solar system. Scientists have already discovered more than 5,000 exoplanets, which are planets outside the solar system, since the first such world was confirmed orbiting a Sun-like star in 1995. To find those distant planets, astronomers used different equipment, like NASA's Kepler Space Telescope, launched in 2009. Its mission was to find as many Earth-like planets dwelling in the Milky Way galaxy as possible. But it's not the only instrument used for searching exoplanets. Anyway, now let's look at the most exciting and promising of these worlds. Gliese 667 cc is a mere 22 light-years from Earth. But even though it seems close, it's still around 129 trillion miles away from us. The planet itself is around 3.8 times as massive as Earth and completes one orbit around its host star within 28 days. In other words, a year on that Earth-like planet is 13 times shorter than a year on our planet. Luckily, the star is a cool red dwarf, so the exoplanet most likely lies in its habitable zone. But there's still a chance that this world might be regularly baked by the flares coming from its parent star, which is not cool on many different levels. Kepler 22b is way further away than the previous world, more than 600 light-years away from our planet. It was the very first Kepler planet found in the habitable zone of its star. This world is larger than Earth. It's about 2.4 times our planet size. Sadly, we still don't know whether this planet is rocky, liquid, or gaseous. The orbit of Kepler 22b is similar to Earth's. It takes the planet 290 days to orbit its G-class star, which is kind of like our Sun. But this star is smaller and colder than ours. Another Kepler planet, this time it's Kepler 69c. It lies a whopping 2,700 light-years away from us. This world is also almost 70% larger than Earth. Researchers know nothing about its composition, but they found out that the planet needs 240 days to complete one orbit. This makes its position in its system like that of Venus in our solar system. At the same time, this world might be more habitable than Venus since its host star is a bit less luminous, 80% of our Sun. TOI 733b is a recently discovered world. It was found in 2023. It's out there, 245 light-years away from Earth, and needs just 4.9 Earth days to complete an orbit around its star. But the coolest thing about this planet is that it might have a massive ocean. According to scientists, the planet is likely to be completely covered with water. Does that mean there could be life on this super-Earth? Time will tell. GJ 1214b is located 48 light-years from Earth. This planet is a super-Earth, almost 3 times bigger in diameter and 8 times heavier than our home. It orbits around its red dwarf star faster than you can binge-watch your favorite series, finishing a complete loop every 38 hours. But it's not just the planet's size or orbit that's out of this world. It's pretty hot out there, with mind-melting 450 degrees Fahrenheit. But the coolest thing is that this planet is practically drowning in water. The sizzling temperatures and crazy high pressures on JG 1214b create some cool materials like hot ice and superfluid water. Superfluidity is something that happens in liquid helium when it's almost as cold as it can get. On Earth, water totally missed the memo about being superfluid because it needs ridiculously low temperatures and off-the-chart pressures to pull off that trick. Still, there's not much use in superfluid water. Even if you try it, you'll just get dehydrated. The super-Earth that's closest to us was discovered in 2016, and it's called Proxima Centauri b. It's located a mere 4 light-years away from Earth and has a mass remarkably similar to that of our planet. A year on Proxima Centauri b is short. It only takes the planet 11.2 days to complete a circle around its central star. Scientists discovered this world after they noticed that its parent star was slightly wobbling. They hadn't been sure what exactly had been happening there until they realized Proxima Centauri b's gravity probably produced pulls and tugs that caused these wobbles. Although the exoplanet is traveling in the habitable zone of its star, Proxima Centauri, it is exposed to extreme ultraviolet radiation, all because it lies very close to its parent star. Also, none of the telescopes that are currently working and exploring exoplanets are positioned well enough to capture the light from the atmosphere of this super-Earth. Most things there are still a mystery to us, even though we're talking about a planet that's really close. Super-Earth TOI 715b orbits a red dwarf, a star smaller and cooler than our Sun. At the moment, such stars remain prime candidates for finding habitable planets orbiting them. Those miniature rocky worlds have far closer orbits than those circling around stars like our Sun. But since red dwarfs are small and cool, the planets don't risk anything when crowding closer. They're still safely within a star's habitable zone. Experts say that TOI 715b might have once had an atmosphere thicker than that of Neptune, and now the planet could be in a transition state where it's losing its atmosphere. To confirm this suspicion, scientists need to do more research, and they might finally learn whether this planet is a watery terrestrial planet. A new super-Earth has been spotted by astronomers, and it's quite intriguing. This planet, called TOI 715b, is about 1.5 the size of Earth, which is why it's called the super-Earth. It's also relatively close to us in space terms, only 137 light-years away. For comparison, most exoplanets are hundreds of light-years away, and all the interesting stuff, like black holes and nebulas, are usually more than thousands of light-years away from us. So, could it be habitable? The habitable zone is an estimate of where a planet might have the right conditions for liquid water. This is what we call some distance from the star where the temperatures on the planet should be okay-ish, and water should stay liquid on its surface. It's not super precise because it depends on a bunch of factors like the type of star, how reflective the planet is, its size, and so on. Also, just being in this zone isn't enough for water to actually be there. The planet also needs the right kind of atmosphere and a few other things. So, we invented a stricter definition in 2014, the conservative habitable zone. It's a more precise term defining the best candidates that have liquid water. Otherwise, we get too many potentially habitable planets that are not actually habitable at all. The CHZ is based on how much energy a planet gets from its star compared to Earth. If a rocky planet gets between 40 to 85%, it's considered to be in the CHZ, no matter how far away it is from its star. These planets have a higher chance of being habitable. And yes, TOI 715b is located there. This super-Earth orbits the M-type star, also called red dwarf. It's a star that's much smaller and cooler than our Sun, about a quarter of the Sun's size and mass. But if the planet is located in the habitable zone, it's actually a better option for life. Red dwarfs live much longer than our Sun, a yellow dwarf. This also means that they have more time to form little creatures on their planets. And this red dwarf really is older than our star. Our Sun is 4.6 billion years old, and this star is 6.6 billion years old, give or take a few hundred million. It doesn't have much magnetic activity, so it's not dangerous. It doesn't flare up like younger red dwarfs. These flares can be super strong and might even hurt planets by taking away their atmospheres. Although some planets around it do have thinner atmospheres, it seems like this red dwarf has already gone all out. These red dwarfs are where we're looking for planets that could support life right now. Our super-Earth is really close to its star, zooming around it in just 19 days. Since the star is small and the planet is so close, the planet passing in front of its star happens a lot and looks really clear. This makes it easy for telescopes like the James Webb to study its atmosphere without needing too much time. Now, speaking of the James Webb Space Telescope, it's bringing us into a new era of understanding distant planets beyond our solar system. Imagine being able to see what gases make up the air on a planet millions of light years away. James Webb will help us to find worlds that could support life. Right now, it's trying to figure out whether TOI 715b has an atmosphere. If it does, its atmosphere might be easier to spot compared to a planet that's drier and denser. And then we might get even more height because it would look like a good place for life. On top of all that, there might be another planet in this system, also in the habitable zone. We're not sure whether it's really there, it's just a candidate with a crazy name. But if it turns out to be real, it would be about the size of Earth. Also, it would be the smallest planet in the habitable zone ever spotted by the TESS telescope. Now, another cool thing about TOI 715b is that it cannot just have water on it, but be an entire water world. An ocean planet is a type of planet that has an ocean covering its surface or has subsurface oceans. They might not have much dry land because the water can cover everything. Sometimes the entire planet can be covered in other liquids, like lava or ammonia. When it comes to planets outside our solar system, we can't see surface water directly with our current technology. Instead, scientists look for water vapor in the atmosphere as a hint there might be liquid water below. And of course, we wonder if these planets can have life, hopefully not in the form of Leviathan-like monsters. Our models show that planets with oceans might be pretty common in our galaxy. This means there could be lots of ocean worlds out there waiting to be discovered. But the most important part about TOI 715b is that it's in the so-called small planet radius gap. If we give the planets a lineup, there will be those that are bigger and smaller than Earth. But there's a sudden gap in planets that are about from 1.5 to 2 times bigger than ours. Where are they? This gap is interesting to scientists because it tells us something about how planets form and change over time. It's not that planets don't form in this size range. They actually start off larger and then lose some of their mass, like a balloon gradually deflating. Perhaps it happens because of how they orbit their stars, with stars blowing away some of their mass as they dance around it, as our Sun does with gas from comet tails. This gap holds a lot of mystery, and planets, like our new super-Earth, are clues that could help us unravel it. We aren't sure whether it exists around red dwarfs. Maybe it's a gap in how dense these planets are, rather than in their actual size. So studying our discovered planet is even more interesting. It'll help us learn more about distant stars and their planets. Now, I mentioned TESS a while back. NASA's TESS, Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite, has been in space for 6 years now and has been incredibly successful. NASA launched TESS because we already found over 5,000 planets orbiting other stars, mainly thanks to the Kepler telescope. But Kepler mostly found large planets, not necessarily like Earth. We decided to focus TESS on finding smaller Earth-like planets around nearby bright stars, making them easier to study with future telescopes. Here's how it works. The camera observes stars and looks for changes in their brightness. If the brightness suddenly drops for a while and then gets back, it could mean there is a planet passing in front of it. But stars can dim for other reasons too. For example, flaring up or having dark spots on their surface, which is why we need to be careful with this data. TESS shows us the size and orbit of these planets. Then ground telescopes help determine their mass. With these three parameters, we can figure out what the planets are made of and if they're rocky like Earth or gassy like Jupiter. Yeah, you want to avoid Jupiter after taco night. One example of TESS's discoveries was the TOI 700 system. There, it discovered its first ever Earth-like planet, TOI 700d. This exoplanet also orbited a red dwarf, and it's even closer to us, about 100 light-years away. Unfortunately, it's unlikely to be habitable because the temperatures there are crazy. Another big discovery was made in the AU microscopy system. TESS discovered a planet about 4 times the size of Earth and another nearly 3 times Earth's size. This system has become a key area for studying how stars and planets form and change over time. TESS has also spotted a variety of other exciting finds, including supernova, hot worlds, and so on. And as it enters its 6th year, we can only expect more exciting findings to come.